Mario Kart, World of Warcraft and Among Us. What do all of these share in common? Well, of course they are video games. My name is Flo Cornall and I am in Sheffield outside of the National Videogame Museum to see why video games are so appealing, addictive, but most of all entertaining. This building right behind me has all of the history of video games, and so let's see a little bit more about what it's all about.
So the National Videogame Museum is a place that's dedicated to preserving game content, artefacts, but also to help inspire younger generations into developing a career in games or some form of activity where they could work on art design, programming, things like that. And that's where we run like educational workshops and things like that for them. We get no funding at all from the government, so we're heavily reliant on entry and donations in particular, but that's all reinvested back into our charity side, targeting underprivileged communities to get into games, to be able to enter the museum for free, while also maintaining our machines as well. Obviously the energy prices have soared, so we're probably a little bit more unique as a museum with the electricity bill.
Before it found its home in Sheffield, the museum was originally located in Nottingham. One of the main decisions they had for moving it to Sheffield was because of Sheffield's video gaming heritage. I spoke to Christian a little bit more about this.
So Sheffield's like always been in the video game industry. Everyone thinks Sheffield Steel City, maybe even football history, but no, we've got two big game companies at the minute, which you might have heard of, is Sumo Digital, who recently worked on the latest Sackboy game, the Little Big Planet spin-off. They also did Team Sonic Racing. We've also got Bono, who are a local company who've made a game called Gang Beasts. But also, previously there was a company called Gremlin Graphics, who were absolutely huge, like late 80s, early 90s, through to the mid 90s. So a lot of games have come from Sheffield, and that's one of our bundles is one of the most important things to show. It's just like, well, this is why Sheffield's important, and we're trying to really build on the branding of Sheffield being the city of gaming, because it's not just us. Around the corner we've got Extra Life Gaming Lounge, which is a cafe but have a variety of games consoles, so you can go in there and play. Just around the corner we've got Meltdown, which is a gaming bar, and then we've also got like close ties with Patriot Games, who do trading cards, and there's also Treehouse board game cafe as well. So we're really working together to enforce the fact that Sheffield is UK's gaming city.
Now that you know a little bit more about Sheffield's relationship with video games, here's a little bit about what I found out whilst I was at the museum. Obviously, it is packed full of arcade machines with limitless levels and some really handy bonus levels already unlocked for you. They also have a really cool Sonic statue in the middle of the museum. And yes, that is me comparing our heights. During my time here, I had a go at one of my childhood favourites, some classic Wii Sports, and I failed gloriously, not sure what I was expecting. You can also find collections of games from Luigi to Sonic. A lot of these arcade machines are loaned from private collectors, but they are also loaned from the museum's creative engineer Joe Dickens. If you're a bit like me and aren't the best at video games, as you can tell right now, then fear not, because there is also a collation of artifacts dotted around the museum you can learn all about. This includes Lara Zaid, game developer Barbie, and Magnavox Odyssey, the grandfather of home video game consoles. Christian told me about one particularly fascinating story about one local Wakefield game that was loaned all the way from the US.
One of the really good artifacts was a developer's diary, a company called Team 17, who were based in Wakefield, so fairly local. So it's amazing that their stuff has ended up in America, even though like it's just up the road. But the diary focuses on their development of Worms 2 for the Amiga, and it's absolutely fascinating looking through. You've got storyboard designs, and then you've got notes about how things went wrong, and it's like we've lost all this, but then rebuilding it back, and it's absolutely fascinating.
Another really interesting story Christian told me about was one that started during the COVID-19 pandemic. During lockdown, the museum launched a program called Animal Crossing Diaries, an exhibition where people could submit their stories. Animal Crossing came out when the pandemic started, and a lot of people were using it not only for entertainment but as a replacement for life. People interacted with the game, sharing their stories, and the National Videogame Museum created an exhibition where people could share their stories online. From poems, virtual parties, to memorial gardens for people they've lost during the pandemic. This was a chance to bring people together, and games like Animal Crossing helped people have routines and keep socialising during the pandemic. This specific exhibition is one that the museum is really proud of, but it also got me thinking about why people turn to video games during lockdown. I asked Christian a little bit more about this.
I think people who probably weren't gamers came round to the idea. It's like, oh, this is actually quite helpful, it's quite educational, but they also help with brain activity as well, and it's just like keeping people going. Obviously during that time there was quite a few games released. Again, Animal Crossing was the big one, and I think mental health wise it really helped stimulate people. It kept people in a routine which they'd lost, and it just kept people going, kept people motivated, and being able to communicate with friends online. For me, it was playing FIFA and the pro clubs element, so I could still talk to my friends, and obviously we take control of one player, so we can't go out and play football, but we can do it online. In some ways it's actually enhanced the pace of video games being popular now. I think nearly 50% of the UK play video games, which accelerated during the pandemic. So as an industry, it's probably the strongest it's ever been, and I think it'll keep growing that way. But as more people are getting aware of it, it's also opening avenues for people to get into the industry as well, which is the fastest growing industry in the UK. I think people are seeing video games as social spaces now, so it might not be so much, right, we'll go out and do this, or it's like we'll jump online, have a chat, catch up, maybe not even play the games. It's just like sort of being in a nice little virtual world. And what makes games so great, probably different from films or books, is you create your own story. Again, using the Animal Crossing Diaries as an example, people have created their own stories, their own memories, and see it as like, this is an accessible medium for anyone can play games. Even people who think they're not gamers probably don't realise when they're playing games on the phone, technically they're a gamer.
The future of video games is in safe hands here. The museum has a unique space called The Lab, where young people can come in and become a games developer, making their own codes and games levels. It shows what working in the industry can be like, but also shows that video games can be used as educational tools. There's usually an unfair stereotype of a teenage boy sitting alone in isolation playing whatever till the sun rises. However, when I spoke to Stacey, the Vocational Learning Manager at the museum, I found out that video games are much more about connections than isolation.
Young people are learning skills that they don't even realise. Things where we bring computers, technology into teaching and learning, so that you're learning it through a video game, but you're learning about maths, science, English, and you can have these conversations. Our most popular games here are the multiplayer games where you're sat playing with a friend, you're having a chat, and our theme for this summer, we do a lot of learning activities throughout the school holidays, and our theme is playing with families playing together. So we want to try and get parents more involved, so it's not something that somebody just sits in the bedroom and does. Let's play it together and see how much your young person is learning through playing video games. So at the museum, our lab section of the museum is an opportunity for young people or anybody in the museum to actually learn about coding, about Twine, actually get involved in designing things that then display on the big screens. We've got games that are at different stages of being made, so you can do a 4-player Pac-Man, for example. So it's different angles of games where you can actually get involved with yourself, and we have got a 6-person snowball fight, which is a video game that was designed by a producer that works for us, so it's the only game of its kind, and it's here in the lab. And when we had the Games Careers Week, we had a lot of students in their final year at university come and showcase their work in our lab, so we could see what they've been doing on their course. We're a charity, so we bid for quite a lot of funding projects, and one that we're currently been working on is getting young women of colour into games, because they're massively underrepresented in the industry, predominantly white men. So we want to try and break that mould, so we've done a lot of work going into communities, trying to build those relationships so that people feel confident, because I think that's one of the biggest things, feeling confident that you can't do it, you don't know how to do it, you haven't got the technology. So we built these relationships, we've got a group of students to come into the museum, into our space here. We co-designed a course with them, a 6-week basic skills course in games design, where they were developing a level of a game. And that was over 6 weeks, so they came every week and actually participated in the course. So we got some students from Sheffield College to help us design the course, and then we recruited students to actually be on the course. And now, excitingly, we've got an award ceremony for those students who have completed the 6 weeks course, so it's given them an insight into games design, and then we're signposting them to different pathways that they could go to after this. But also with that, we reached out to a charity called Laptops for All, and they have given each student a laptop so that they can carry on their love for games design after the course is finished.
As my time is reaching its natural game over, I could have genuinely played all the video games for the rest of the day with ease. It's clear that the National Videogame Museum can be a fun day trip with your mates to play some nostalgic favourites. However, it's a lot more than that. From the objects they've collected to their objectives to get young people an insight into an industry they are so familiar with at a surface level. From Games Careers Weeks to showcases of emerging talent, according to Stacey, one of the museum's next projects is all about redesigning the city of Sheffield, with each young person involved designing their own level of a video game that'll ultimately be exhibited in the museum. This museum is a place which truly places the video game in first place, as it rightly deserves, and celebrates everything that it has given and will continue to do, with the next programmers and character designers literally waiting on their doorstep. Also, who wouldn't want to spend an afternoon playing video games and arcade machines? Machines that in fact have been rigged by clever engineers with a crocodile clip, so that you don't have to spend any pennies at all. Thank you for watching. This has been Flo Cornall from Voice Magazine. Off to now practice my video game skills and hopefully not rage quit.
I thought maybe just playing against my family, that meant I was bad. No, I'm just bad in general.